TV. I'm your host, Janet Palumbi. I invite you to join me today as we discuss news and current events, local and worldwide, all from a faith-based perspective. Now, on today's show, as we honor fathers in the month of June, I begin by asking the question, what is a father? I am broadcasting today from my dining room table, just to make a point. On the wall behind me is a sign that says, gather. Now, I grew up in a home where my family ate dinner together every evening. My dad came home from work, we sat at the dinner table, no TV, no phones, just food, fellowship, and conversation. Now, although my home life wasn't perfect, I know that I was one of the lucky ones. I grew up in a two-parent family, and my dad was there for us. The biblical role of a father suggests that he is called upon to be a leader and protector for the family, and to give an example of Christ's love by being loving towards his wife. He's also to be strong in the faith and to teach the children right from wrong. So I have a couple of contrasting pictures today for you, showing right from wrong, peppered with a little bit of humor. On the right side, this is just a dad trying to teach his son not to be a liberal. And on the left side, I'm not sure what this picture is. This says dad goals at Disneyland. Not sure why a father would even take their children to woke Disneyland anymore. And I can definitely assure you that most dads that I know would not dress this way. We'll discuss this issue a little further along in the show today. So many in society do not believe that fathers are even necessary. I want to play a clip from a PragerU video where Dennis Prager shares some societal misconceptions regarding fatherhood and whether or not a father is even necessary in society anymore. Let's listen to Dennis Prager.
Are fathers necessary? For all of recorded history, the need to explain why fathers are necessary would have been regarded as, well, unnecessary. It would have been like explaining why water or air is necessary. But we live at a time in which the obvious is routinely denied. There have been articles in the most prestigious journals denying the importance of fathers. The Atlantic magazine, for example, published an article titled, "Are Fathers Necessary? A Paternal Contribution May Not Be as Essential as We Think." The New York Times published a discussion among 5 intellectuals titled, "What Are Fathers For?" One of them, Hannah Rosen, an editor at New York Magazine, opened her response by stating, "I'm not sure whether a child needs a father." I could give dozens of such examples. I'll just give one more. HuffPost published a piece titled, "Fathers Are Not Needed." Fortunately, this dismissal of the importance of fathers is not universal. In a 2008 Father's Day speech a few months before his election as President of the United States, Barack Obama said, "Fathers are critical to the foundation of each family. That they are teachers and coaches, they are mentors and role models, they are examples of success, and they are the men who constantly push us toward it." What makes his comments particularly noteworthy is that Barack Obama grew up without a father.
So, are fathers really necessary? I believe they are. And Roland Warren writes in a recent article in Faith Gateway titled, "Dads are to be earthly mirrors of a heavenly reality." The Bible says in Ephesians 6:12, "Our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the powers of this dark world and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." Warren states that over the years, God has shown me that the attack on the institution of fatherhood and the strategy to make fathers unloving and ineffective is a primary goal of Satan himself. Why? Because if fathers are distant, distracted, disconnected, or even abusive, children will believe all fathers are this way, even a heavenly father who claims to love them unconditionally. Well, I find it quite interesting that in the month of June, when we celebrate and honor fathers, Pride Month is also being celebrated. Of course, Dad only gets one day, and the Alphabet Gang gets an entire month dedicated to their perversion. As I said I would discuss a little later, sadly, I believe that we are experiencing the emasculation of men in the world today. We just saw that dad cruising Disneyland with his daughter in his matching mermaid pants. Media and Hollywood are largely responsible for this gradual process of psychological and emotional castration of masculine energy. There is an all-out attack on masculinity and godly fatherhood. Evidence is everywhere. Let's take a look at a little clip from a recent trip that my husband and I took to Walmart. Okay, so Dean, where are we today?
I think we're in the men's department at Walmart.
Okay, no wait. It says the men's department. It does say menswear. Okay, if I came home with any of these swimsuits for you, what would you do? Would you wear them?
What would I be doing in them? Would I be going outside in front of other people?
Well, I think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Has it gotten more challenging to figure out whether we're in the men's department or the ladies' department?
I haven't seen the men's department for a long time.
Yeah, and not just at Walmart, right?
Every day my old clothes look newer.
Yeah, it's pretty challenging to find clothing, and it's actually challenging to know whether we're in the men's department or the ladies' department now, isn't it?
It is.
Some of the clothes in my department look like men's clothes. Do you get the feeling that they're trying to neutralize gender?
Yes, I get that.
Yeah. We were just checking, but I just wanted to get your opinion on that, baby. But we are in the men's department today, anyway.
If you say so.
Today. Tomorrow, there might not be men's or women's department.
No, it'll be just a neutral. Binary clothing plan that.
There you go. Okay. Well, I hadn't planned to bring those home for you, baby. I just wanted to get your opinion today, okay? All right. Yes, it has become increasingly difficult to find masculine attire for men, and I can assure you that my husband would not have worn a matching mermaid costume with my daughter when she was growing up. Senator Josh Hawley recently wrote a book, and this book is called Manhood. In this recently published book called Manhood by Josh Hawley, he argues that the character of men and the male virtue that goes along with it is a necessary ingredient to a functioning society and a healthy, free republic. A free society that despises manhood will not remain free. The American founders believed that a republic depends on certain masculine virtues. In this bold new book, Senator Hawley calls on American men to stand up and embrace their God-given responsibility as husbands, fathers, and citizens. No republic has ever survived without men of character to defend what is just and true. Starting with the wisdom of the ancients, from the Greek and Roman philosophers to Jesus of Nazareth, and drawing on the lessons of American history, Hawley identifies the defining strengths of men, including responsibility, bravery, fidelity, and leadership. As Teddy Roosevelt declared, the very existence of the state depends on the character of its citizens. I am for business, but I am for manhood first. Hawley shows why the foolhardy assault on masculinity in education, the media, the workplace, and every level of government is an assault on freedom itself. So we've determined that there is clearly a problem in society with masculinity. Fatherless has also been a huge problem for a very long time. From God's perspective, all fathers, even ones that are not Christians, are created to imitate his goodness. Luke 11 says, "Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him?" This next video clip is a bit lengthy, but it contains a lot of important facts and suggestions on how we personally can contribute to helping to fix the fatherlessness issues in our culture. Let's listen to Unapologetic with Amala from PragerU as she shares her thoughts and personal experiences on fatherlessness.
Prison time, homelessness, drug abuse and alcoholism, neglect, domestic violence, single parenthood, teen pregnancy, dropping out of school. What do all of these issues have in common? Well, if you grow up in this country without a father, you are more likely to experience all of them. Right now in America, we are experiencing an epidemic of absent fathers. Now, I already know what some of you might be thinking. I've already heard this covered by the media on both sides of the aisle, and this is simply a black issue. But what if I told you that fatherlessness is an issue that affects every single one of us in more ways than we could ever possibly know? How did we get here, and is there anything that we can do about it? Let's break it down. My parents got divorced when I was around 6 years old, and suddenly I was just seeing my father less and less. Weekly visits became monthly visits, became talking to each other once a year. That was my new normal, familiar strangers. To be honest, it didn't really affect me that much. One parent was enough, but I would come to find out later in life that I happened to be super lucky. Not because I didn't need anything from my dad or that there was nothing that he could truly give me, but because I managed to escape some of the horrific outcomes that can be attached to growing up with an absent father. So what are these outcomes? Well, I found that when compared to children from two-parent households, fatherless kids had a 2 times greater chance of infant mortality. They were more likely to face and perpetrate abuse and neglect. They were more likely to experience obesity. They were more likely to become pregnant as teens, more likely to drop out of school, more likely to abuse drugs, and more likely to go to prison. And those are just a few of the negative outcomes that we can trace back to fatherlessness. Imagine all of the things that we're missing. Now, I didn't know this, but according to Pew Research Center, the United States has the highest share of single parenting in the world. And the issue of fatherlessness in single parent households is an issue that continues to grow in this country. According to US Census data, in 1968, about 15% of US kids were living in a single parent household. Jump forward to now, and that number has doubled to 30%. Now, I live in Los Angeles, a city that's notorious for running rampant with drug abuse and homelessness and crime, and oftentimes when I see these things happening right in front of my face, I fail to make the connection between that and fatherlessness, when really the odds are that all of these people that we're seeing have grown up without a dad. Like I said before, many view this to be a black issue because the black population does have the largest percentage of single-parent fatherless homes, about 66%. But this isn't just a black problem. In the Latino and Hispanic community, about 42% of children grow up in single-parent households. For white people, this number drops to a still whopping 34%, and Asians follow at 20%. So on average, about 1 in 3 American children are growing up in a single-parent household. This is a problem for everyone. So how did we get here? Well, if we're looking at a single-parent household, we're typically dealing with a single mom. As of 2020, there were 14.84 million families with a single mother in the United States. And you might be thinking, well, sometimes marriages don't work out, and as a result, moms are left to take care of their children. And that statement would have been true in, say, the 1960s, where 4% of single mothers had never been married. Flash forward to today, and that has jumped to over 52%, a 13-fold increase. Meaning my mother's story of divorce and single motherhood now represents a minority. In today's day and age, women are getting pregnant out of wedlock and raising the children alone. This goes to show that marriage is not really just a piece of paper. Marriage is often the barrier between a single-parent household and a two-parent household. Not only that, it can be the barrier between poverty and success. And the numbers are stark. If you grow up with a single unwed mother, you are 4 times more likely to experience poverty than somebody who lived with married parents. So we know the issue, we know what these families look like, and we know we're all affected by it. So why is fatherlessness still a growing issue in this country? There's 2 areas we have to look at: politics and culture. Politically, the welfare system comes into the discussion. In the 1960s, some well-meaning policies were put forth that ended up not doing so well. In fact, they actually incentivized single mother households. Specifically, in 1964, President Lyndon B. Johnson launched his Great Society, an initiative with the goal of beating poverty, reducing crime, and promoting equality in America. His welfare system was very generous, particularly for single mothers, but there was one rule that ruined it all: the man in the house rule, which essentially said that if you have a working or able-bodied man living in your house, we cannot help you. They even went as far as to send federal agents to these households to make sure that no man was living there. If I was a mom at the time, I would throw the man out of the house too to get that check. These things don't exactly promote marriage. This is exactly why we shouldn't judge policies based on their intentions, but actually on their results. And these results don't bode well. Speaking of things that don't bode well, culturally, radical feminism in Hollywood has completely destroyed the view of not only the American man, but the American dad. It is now a commonly held belief that men are toxic in nature and oppressive forces of patriarchy that must be overcome. Not exactly a person you'd want to marry or have kids with. In Hollywood, young girls have gotten used to watching these ever-present archetypal characters like dumb dad, a-hole boyfriend, Prince Charming, who doesn't exist, and the dreaded girl boss. A woman who is a subpar man, values her career over her family, is sexually promiscuous, and utterly unattached. If I got paid every time I heard the whole "I don't need a man" thing, I'd be the one buying Twitter. It seems as though feminism values single motherhood over married parenting. Couple our cultural problems with our political ones and you have a recipe for disaster. These two things clearly explain the situation that we find ourselves currently living in. So you know everything now except for what can be done. For starters, we need a culture that values good men, good fathers, and good role models. Can you imagine how our perception of men would change if the media started showing good, well-rounded men taking on the responsibility of fatherhood? We need to step away from the toxic masculinity narrative and into one that values the inherent traits that men have. Politically, we should be looking at policies that don't incentivize single motherhood. Maybe take a look at that welfare system and do a little bit of tweaking. So of course, Hollywood's not going to start making these wonderful movies tomorrow, and we're certainly not going to get legislation in the coming days that suddenly changes all of these problems. What can we do right now to fix this? Well, there's a lot of things that we can do as individuals. First, reject these modern narratives of radical feminism and toxic masculinity. They're clearly not leading us down a good path and not doing anything that builds a fruitful society. Accept the fact that two-parent households are ideal. And that's not to denigrate the work of single mothers and single fathers, but we should all be striving towards what is best for our children, and that is a two-parent household. And let me make this clear, we cannot wait for Hollywood or politicians to come in and fix these problems. We have to fix these problems. And the fixing starts when we celebrate, appreciate, and honor fatherhood in our country by building a new culture that has a deep-seated love for parenthood and family, so that when that beautiful moment does come for them, they take on all the responsibilities that come along with it gladly. And to all the fathers and the future fathers watching this, we need you. We need you to be there as a good friend, a good role model, a good husband, a good dad. And you might be thinking that's way too much pressure. You don't know how to be a father, how to take on that role, and certainly not the responsibilities that come along with it. But statistically speaking, just by being there, you can change the world.
So recognizing this cultural issue is only half the battle. Identifying solutions is how we win. We cannot look to media, educators, or politicians to fix fatherlessness. They actually are a huge part of the problem. They're profiting off of fatherlessness, and as Roland Warren stated in the article clip I read earlier, Satan is reaping the rewards of this evil attack on fatherhood and manhood. So what is a father? Well, these personal pictures are just a few images of what a father is to me. I am again one of the lucky ones. I am fortunate and wonderfully blessed to have a husband that is not perfect, but is a man of God. He was a loving husband to me. He is a loving husband to me. He has been a godly father to both of my children and was there for them while we were raising them. They're now adults, and they're highly productive, godly adults. And he's been a great grandfather to our little precious grandson. 1 Timothy 3:2-5 says, "Now the overseer is to be above reproach, faithful to his wife, temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not given over to drunkenness, not violent but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. He must manage his own family well and see that his children obey him, and he must do so in a manner worthy of respect." Galatians 6 says that a man reaps what he sows. To sow means to plant. To reap means to gather the fruit, the result of the seeds planted. When a father plants good seeds in his children, he is blessed with a bountiful harvest of good fruits. Patriot Church has dedicated the month of June as Prayer Month. Let us remember to pray for our fathers. Pray for them to be godly men of strong character. Let us also remember that God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. 1 Peter 5:5 says, Young men, in the same way, be submissive to those who are older. All of you clothe yourselves with humility toward one another, because God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Moms, dads, nanas, and pop-ups, we're not required to be perfect, but we are called to show up. If we don't show up, the world will. The world is stalking our children. The Bible says the devil is crafty. He is like an evil cat waiting to pounce on our children and mutilate and devour them. We need to love our kids. We need to really love our kids, not just tolerate them. We need to share the gospel with them and correct them when they get confused. Ephesians 6 says, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in discipline and instructions of the Lord." Do y'all remember that old Sylvester and Tweety cartoon? Sylvester's always lurking around, trying to capture Tweety. But through Christ, we have ultimate power over the devil. If dads will show up and lead their families, Satan will lose. He won't be able to touch our kids. I end the show today with a beautiful message and song from Sean Foyt. Fathers have a critical role in the world. They protect, provide, love, and cherish. God is the good father that fathers strive to emulate. Thank you for joining me today. I welcome you to join me each Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're called to stay busy and occupy until he comes. I'm here to inform, encourage, and ignite, all in the spirit of faith. I'm Janet Palumbi. See you next time on Patriot TV.
Before I was formed, I was loved and adored by a Father who knows me by name. You sewed me together and buried your treasure inside of a soul